The price of a human life in Prague, 1968, was equal to the cost of a single cheap plastic button. Failure does not arrive when the shots are fired. It arrives when the silence around you suddenly becomes too intentional. It is the moment you realize your camouflage has turned into a target. The error was not committed in a secret bunker or during a microfilm handoff. It happened at the level of muscle memory, at the exact moment a hand habitually reached for the collar of a windbreaker. January in Prague smells of coal smoke and the premonition of blood. The student protest is a chaos, a living organism pulsing in Wenceslas Square. There are no regulations here, no ranks, only youth and its careless freedom. In this crowd, a Central Intelligence Agency operative codenamed Gardner was supposed to be a ghost. His legend was built on a foundation of hundreds of minor facts, verified and confirmed by decades of archival work. He had a perfect Czech accent with a slight Moravian inflection, worn local-made boots, and a pack of Lipa cigarettes in his pocket. His training at Langley was considered a gold standard. Gardner could strip a Makarov pistol in total darkness and knew the patrol schedule for every sector of the city. He was the embodiment of discipline. And it was precisely this discipline that became his death warrant. On the training grounds of Virginia, he was taught that neatness is a form of concealment, and that being squared away is a sign of control. Instructors hammered into him dress codes that, in the real world outside the base, proved to be toxic. On that evening, a piercing cold stood in the square, biting to the bone. Students in frayed jackets and stretched sweaters shouted slogans, their movements sweeping and uneven. They did not wear clothes. They lived in them. In the local environment, there was an unwritten code of street style dictated by the need to run fast or simply by a youthful protest against the system. No student buttoned their jacket completely. The top button always remained free for breathing, the bottom one for stride. It was an aesthetic of carelessness that cannot be learned from textbooks. Gardner stood 10 meters from the monument of St. Wenceslas. His fingers, encased in a thin leather glove, touched his collar. It was a microscopic gesture, dictated by discomfort and a habit of military order. He felt the draft and mechanically fastened the plastic button under his very chin, tightening the windbreaker to the limit. In that moment, he ceased to be part of the crowd. He became a foreign body, too correct, too symmetrical, too restrained. Close up on his right hand, the fingers in black leather convulsively grip that small gray button. The plastic feels cold even through the glove. It is the physical embodiment of his anxiety. At that moment, he was being watched. 3 men in gray coats from the Czechoslovak state security were working the sector with cold, professional, predatory focus. They had no supercomputers. They had only eyes and a trained gaze for anomalies. In their understanding of the world, an ordinary person does not strive to be flawless in a crowd. Counterintelligence is not about car chases. It is the monotonous correlation of inconsistencies. One of the operatives noticed Gardner, not by his face, not by his movements, but by that fatal fastened button. In his eyes, it was a signal. Too neat, too hermetic. A student does not fear the cold as much as a man used to a uniform fears detection. The hunter gave a sign to his partner, a barely perceptible nod of the head. The mechanism of suppression hummed into motion. The quiet work began. No sirens, only the clicking of relays in telephone hubs and the footsteps of heavy soles on the cobblestones of neighboring alleys. Gardner continued to stand, unaware that his shell had already been cracked. He felt the weight of the pistol under his jacket, which now seemed like redundant cargo. The smell of cheap laundry soap from his own clothes suddenly became suffocating. He felt cold sweat run down his spine, and it was not a reaction to the weather, but the primal instinct of prey. They led him for 3 blocks. The surveillance was seamless, like the operation of a clockwork mechanism. One agent replaced another at the turns. They merged with the shadows of old buildings. Gardner committed a second error. He turned too sharply to check his tail. It was a professional pivot of the shoulders that betrayed a man with combat training. In the world of espionage, confirmation of suspicion is already the end of the game. The philosophy of failure lies in the fact that we always take our true identity into the field. We can change our name, passport, and hair color, but we cannot erase decades of habits. Gardner was not destroyed by a traitor or a technical glitch. He was destroyed by a craving for comfort and a subconscious fear of chaos. He was taught to survive in extreme conditions, but he was not taught how to be truly careless. When they pinned him against the wall in a dark passage between houses on Prekop Street, he did not resist. He looked at the operative's hands and saw in them the reflection of his own fate. A spy is not destroyed by the enemy. He is destroyed by his own human nature. We seek to close ourselves off when we are afraid. We fasten our buttons to create an illusion of protection. But in this game, any protection is a confession of guilt. Gardner sat in a cell at Pancrack and looked at his hands without gloves. His legend was dead. His organization would disavow him, and all that remained in his memory was the sensation of that small, slippery plastic button under his fingers. In the silence of the prison corridor, interrupted only by the hum of ventilation and the distant grinding of keys, he understood the central truth of his trade. You can know all the secrets of an empire, but if you do not know how to wear your jacket the way a desperate student wears it, all your knowledge is not worth a kopeck. Would you like me to adapt this script into a technical breakdown of the specific counter-surveillance mistakes made during the tale?